Maybe the most anticipated of our weekly Chalk Talk segments with the head coach of the LaSalle Explorers, Brett Gordon. So excited to have you, coach. And first and foremost, congratulations on a huge win against St. Joe's Prep on Saturday at Upper Dublin. It captured the hearts and minds of many, and a sold out crowd, a huge viewing audience online. You folks have engaged a lot of fans and a lot of stakeholders and a lot of high school football fans with your play this season.
Yeah, thanks, Bob. We overall, I'm just really happy for our players and our coaching staff and our alumni, the LaSalle community in general. It was a great night. The atmosphere lived up to expectations. I thought the game also lived up to expectations, which is rare. Um, at the end of the day, I'm really just super happy for the kids and our coaching staff. Our coaching staff did a great job getting our players ready to play. And then our kids showed a lot of resiliency, a lot of toughness, and to see kind of that euphoric state after the game and the excitement, and in certain ways the accomplishment in the eyes of our players, I was very happy for them and very proud at the same time.
I think it's worth it to dive back into the game and talk about some of the key moments. Let's talk about the first seismic shift, and that was the field position battle in what was a scoreless first half. And I think I'm okay in saying that St. Joe's Prep was winning the field position battle, and yet your defense did an incredible job to keep the Hawks off the scoreboard and take you guys to half it at 0-0. Curious as to what you saw from the first 24 minutes.
Yeah, I mean, we know that St. Joe's is very, very good on defense. They always are. They don't make anything easy. I mentioned that last week. So, we knew, especially early on, it was going to be a little bit of a boxing match, if you will, back and forth. So each team could kind of get a feel for how the other was playing. To your point, um, we seemed to be inside our 10-yard line almost on every possession. But at the same time, our defense kept coming up with stops. They had the big turnover early in the game, and we weren't able to punch it in, which is something that we have to get better at as an offensive unit. But at the end of the day, our defense really stepped up. And then, as I told them after the game, anytime games get into the overtime periods, the score was certainly not indicative, really, of how either team's defense played. I thought both defenses played extremely well, and it was just going to come down to who can make one more big play, and we were able to do that.
Let's then move to the second half before we get to the overtime because it turned into a bit of a shootout of sorts. 28 points scored total in that second half period. What was unlocked for you guys offensively, and what did St. Joe's Prep do well on their end offensively?
Yeah, I mean, I think some of it was what I mentioned earlier. There was a lot of feeling out process in the first half, just strategically. There wasn't anything they did that was totally foreign to what we were expecting. And I think we just needed to settle down a little bit. I think there was definitely some nerves offensively in the first half. And then I think we settled in. I thought our offensive line did a really, really good job in pass protection, which we knew was going to be very important for us. And then I think Gavin in the second half, especially, really grew up and started making some big time plays and some big time moments. I also thought that, you know, we needed some guys that maybe are names that are not household names every week to step up and make some plays. We certainly saw that with the likes of Jimmy Dolan, Nick Swanson, Josh Simmons from the offensive side of the ball. And then defensively, I thought our kids did an outstanding job of just staying, hungry and relentless the whole game. We talk about adversity is going to strike every single week. You never know when it's coming. It's going to come at some point. We certainly had, some opportunities defensively, especially in the second half. They started getting going just a little bit, and then it seemed like every time they did, we came up with a tough physical stop. But at the end of the day, when you're playing teams of that caliber, they're very well coached as well on the other end, and they're going to make plays. And because of that, I was very proud of the resiliency of our team, of how we kept responding back to, the body blows going back and forth, both sides of the ball. And we hung in, and I thought our toughness showed through, which as the head coach, I'm probably most proud of.
One young man in particular on the defensive end that stood out was Justin Hawkins, and understand through some of the reporting out there that he was a little dinged up going into the contest, and yet made huge tackles. The 4th and goal for St. Joe's Prep when it was 0-0. Of course, he had an interception, a couple pass breakups, including a big one in the end zone. I feel like that young man has grown so much over his time and is playing terrific football in the defensive secondary.
He is. I mean, the toughness that I talked about there. I mean, Justin's at the front of that line. I mean, he actually broke his thumb during Tuesday's practice last week. So he ended up having to go in and see the doctor, had to get a cast put on it. There was some discussions about, how he wanted to handle it, and his, immediate response was, whatever I have to do to be ready for Saturday night, I'm going to do. So not only, does that show the toughness level of his mindset, but to your point, I thought he had 3 or 4 of the biggest plays in that game the other night. Obviously the interception, but those 2 pass breakups that were going to be large chunk plays for their offense, where he was in great position. We coach that all the time. The defensive guys, we talk about popping the ball out, as soon as it hits the receiver's hands, and he executed it flawlessly. And to your point, Justin's a guy whose name probably isn't brought up as much as it should be. But to see him perform the way he did Saturday, I couldn't have been, more proud of him and happier for him.
And then I think a play that embodies your entire mindset, Brett, and the culture and the buy-in that you're getting from these guys is when Grayson McHugh intercepts the football near the goal line at the end of regulation after Christian Peterman provides the initial pressure. That is a formerly exclusive, effectively, defensive end who's now your left tackle and will jump in on defensive plays at times, and also as a former pass catcher, right, as a tight end. And I feel like every one of those things that he's done over the course of his career prepared him for a moment like that. And I'd love to get your perspective as the head coach of the team when you saw that play occur.
Yeah, it was, to me, a couple things stood out. You mentioned we had somebody, Grayson, who played exclusively on the defensive side of the ball last year, didn't play any offense. And then this year, because of his role that we need him at left tackle on the offensive side, his work defensively has been limited. So for me, it was two-part. Number one, he was that dialed in that when he did get out there, he knew exactly what to do, which is a testament again to our defensive staff, starting with Dave Sowers and how well he has those guys prepared every week. That for a kid like Grayson, who doesn't get a ton of reps in games, is out there in the biggest time of the game, and first and foremost mentally was dialed in, knowing exactly what to do given the circumstance. And then his instincts kicked in, as well as Christian Peterman there, getting the ball deflected in a turnover at a time of the game where things weren't looking really good for the outcome. So again, it's the part I was most proud of is how prepared the guys were as far as the time of the game situation, and following their disciplines and their rules, which we talk about all the time as a program.
I think prepared is a great word, because I'll say even myself, and I think a lot of folks in that stadium, were unprepared for that particular play call. And I'm curious as to your perspective on the other side of the field. 8 seconds left, within, say, 25 yards, for a field goal standpoint at least, to see St. Joe's Prep throw the football in that position. And were you guys, certainly you were ready for it, but is it something you expected to see in that moment?
No, listen, I mean, it was certainly not what I was expecting, given the fact of where the ball was, the game situation. They still had a timeout left. But that being said, I've coached in a lot of football games. Emotions run high. I myself have made plenty of silly calls over the years, or ones that you wish you had back. And I'm sure the St. Joe's Prep staff was thinking that right after it happened. Maybe it was something they saw on film. Maybe it was a tendency. I'm sure they had their reasons for calling it. But yes, I was surprised that the ball was in the air. And then again, even more of a testament, given the circumstance, if that's the last thing we would have expected them to do, that, we had two or three kids in the perfect position who had an opportunity to make a big play and delivered on it.
Let's talk about special teams. Chris Heck, who came into the contest as your reserve place kicker and was thrust into the spotlight with enormous extra points all night, 2 overtime field goals, one of which was truly to extend the game. If he misses, it's over. What a job by that young man. Perhaps you could tell us a little bit about his story to get here.
Yeah, I think Chris's story is a great one, and it's a great one for everybody in the program, to kind of look at. Chris kicked a lot on special teams last year. Special teams in general was an area we wanted to make sure that we got a lot better in the 2024 season, not only in our punt protection, but our field goal and extra point process. And coming into the year, going into preseason and even up till very recently, Chris was our reserve kicker. But we talk all the time in meetings, in practice of, we are constantly in competition with each other to make sure that we're pushing each other in certain positions. We are going to put, in our opinion at the time, the best guys out there, to give us the best chance to win. Chris had an opportunity against O'Hara to step in. Aiden Hatfield, who had been doing the kicking duties most of the year, had a slight injury situation, which kept him out of the O'Hara game. So we put Chris in and said, "Hey, Chris, let's do this." And Chris, I thought, did a very good job both in kickoffs and the field goal / extra point process in the O'Hara game. And then, I made a decision this week that we were going to continue to ride with Chris. So really, really proud of his ability to mentally hang in, for most of the season, a backup type role. And it's a classic example for all of our players in the program of, you never know when your number is going to be called. But you want to make sure that you are mentally ready and dialed in. So when your number is called, you can step up and to deliver for the team. So I think special teams the other night is probably an area that might get slightly overlooked just based on the craziness of the game. But to your point, being able to execute a couple really crucial punt situations, and then obviously the field goals and extra points with the game on the line, between Colton McAleer snapping, Cole Trazak holding, and then Chris executing the actual kicks. Those were big time plays that played a significant role in us winning that game.
And the team that you did it against, St. Joe's Prep, year over year for the past decade plus, has had the best special teams unit in the state. Blocks, call it a kick, a field goal or a punt, call it 2 out of every 3 games. And you guys protected really well in that regard. It was impressive. And congrats again to Chris for everything he did there.
Yeah, first time I met the team, we talked that our special teams need to be special. It's not going to be an area that's going to be overlooked, and especially in the types of games like Saturday night was, when you're playing against great opponents. It's such a crucial part of the outcome, and in certain ways can steer a game one direction or the other. So I wouldn't classify our special teams yet as special. I think we've shown a ton of improvement, but I also was proud of how we hung in, but still realize there's areas for improvement as we go along here.
All right, let's get to the play. I think we've gotten there in time, time outline order here. So it is 34-27. Great back shoulder ball in the second part of the fourth overtime from Sidwar to O'Brien. And you decide, let's go for 2. We were calling for it on the broadcast, by the way. We liked your call. We made the joke about a 10:30 p.m. ordinance. I don't know when Upper Dublin was going to shut the lights off on you. And you decide you're going for it. So walk us through from there.
So it was a I'll kind of break it down in 2 ways. First was the decision to go for it. I pretty much decided when we got into the fourth overtime, because they had the ball first, they scored. I was starting to think along the lines of, hey, when we score here, I think I'm probably going to go for 2 and try to end this thing for a couple reasons. Number one was, just the way the game was going. You never know when it's going to come down to one opportunity. And, I have a lot of confidence in our players. I think they've earned the ability for us to show confidence in them. So that was first off, the decision was to go for two. Um, and then in hindsight, it was probably the worst possible play call in that situation, given what I already knew. So the what makes the Phillies special, or for lack of a better term, the throwback to the quarterback work, is if a team is playing man coverage, right? Because when a defense is playing man-to-man coverage, nobody's responsible for the quarterback. So the play design, and we ran it in 2014 against DeMatha, right before halftime when Kyle Shermer was the quarterback, and it worked perfectly. It was a 2-point conversion that was needed at the time, and it was the only ever time I called it in my history of coaching. So we have it ready pretty much every week. My gut told me it was not the right call. Joey O'Brien agreed with me that we should not call it. Gavin said we should call it. And then the play clock started running down. So I said, well, at this point, we're going to call it and roll with it. The other option was to just duplicate what we did on the touchdown pass and just throw a one-on-one ball up with Joey. And so that's how we got there. And then they lined up, unfortunately, like I thought they were going to, and right away said, this probably isn't going to end well. And then fortunately for us, Joey's the best athlete on the field. I would argue might be the best athlete anywhere. His instincts kicked in. He bailed me out of a bad call, which could have gone a little bit sideways had it not worked. But to the players' credit, nobody panicked. I think that's probably a testament to how we practice. And then Joey understood that if they were in zone, he was probably going to have to improvise. And then Dez and really JP both were kind of in the same spot in the back of the end zone. It'd feel like the play from my vantage point took probably 30 some seconds as I was watching it, saying, oh man, how's this thing going to end? Joey improvised. They defended it very well, got a hand actually on Joey's pass. And then Dez did a great job. And he did. There was an action shot from one of the photographers that he got his hands under the ball about 6 inches off the ground. So that's how we got there. The players bailed me out from a bad play call. So the play will go down in infamy as a crazy ending to a great game. But, the play call wasn't great, but what was important to me was making sure that, I had the utmost confidence that, our kids could deliver in crunch time, and they did.
I'm never a fan of asking coaches or people to rank, okay, is that the best game? Is that the third best game you were ever part of? But if you had to put it in a bucket, top tier, next tier, where does that game fall for you?
I mean, it's up there. I mean, going back to my playing days in high school at LaSalle, was a part of some pretty emotional, exciting wins. When I think back to my college career at Villanova, there was definitely a handful of memorable ones that still stick with me today. And then throughout my coaching tenure at LaSalle, this one's up there in that upper tier, because I think what was at stake, with everything that we're doing, with all the kind of the changes we've made, all of what the players have done to position themselves to play in a game like that, and to deliver under the circumstances against that opponent, with all the excitement going on and the atmosphere, it'd be pretty tough to top this one. At the same time, starting today, I want to make sure that, we reel in the excitement real quick and make sure that we understand that in the grand scheme of things, that's all it was one game. Our season is still going on. We have a handful of really tough opponents left that we still have to play. And I trust that this team is mature enough to handle this level of excitement and success and make sure we dial back in very quickly starting today.
It's a great point. And last one for you, because Bonner Prendergast has impressed everybody. A huge win over Roman Catholic. You're going to go to their home field, effectively playing on their turf field. So, the atmosphere, I know Bonner and LaSalle fans will still bring the noise, but there's a pretty stark, how shall we say, capacity situation there, and it'll just be a different environment than Saturday night. That's my last question for you: is how do you impart that to your guys and make sure you guys are ready to go?
Well, we're going to stay consistent with our message week to week that it's, we're focusing on our process and our progress. Bonner certainly has my attention. I know they have our players' attention. They've been scoring a ton of points. They've beat everybody on their schedule, most of them very handily. I've had a chance to take a look at them the last 24 hours. They have a ton of playmakers. We're going to have to be dialed in on both sides of the ball. And then, the maturity level of where we are as a team, is going to come front and center. To your point, the environment's going to be different. We're playing on their campus. The venue is going to be very different. It's a 5 o'clock kickoff, which makes it even, a little bit more unusual as far as what we're used to. But I'm going to challenge the players today. And at the end of the day, if we're going to be the type of team that we believe we are, you have to handle your business every week. You focus on yourselves and not necessarily your opponents. Make sure that our practice is a good week starting today. And the team has given me no reason so far this year to think that we're not going to do that and lock in. But as a staff, we got to remember these are still high school kids and they should be emotional after the weekend. They should feel good about where they're at. But we got to make sure that, they stay as focused as possible because they're going to need to beat a really good Bonner team come Friday night.
Thanks for doing this, Coach. Sorry it went a little bit long, but as long as you're good with it, I think the LaSalle football fans are going to stick with us to the end of this one. So thanks for
All
being
good,
here.
Bob, and thanks to all the fans for the support Saturday night. We appreciate it.
We'll catch you on Friday. Thanks again.
Thank you.